Politics impacts more areas of your life than you think. I was driving to the church yesterday just thinking about how many areas of your life politics touches. And this is the great deception of the enemy, that for some reason talk to churches and pastors and preachers and Christians into thinking that the godly, constrained vision of Christianity was to not be obnoxious with your Christianity. Don't take your Christianity into the marketplace where it's not wanted, because we don't want to force people to believe in Jesus like they tried to do in the Crusades. And so just be quiet and be salt and light by not saying anything, which is an oxymoron. And it's the deceptive lie of the enemy to silence the church from bringing influence to the very place God called her to go. And so the reason that the enemy is so aggressively advancing in our culture is not because the power of Christ is too weak in the church. It's because the church has willingly and voluntarily ceded ground to the enemy and put down the microphone to speak righteousness to a culture. So in this series on Jesus and politics, this isn't about me telling you how to look at the superficial issues of our day and vote appropriately. I'm wanting us to do a wholesale rethinking of how our brain is wired to think about nations, nation states, governments, civil magistrates, citizenship, and your role in that system. Because almost every area of your life and your children's life is touched by politics. I was driving here yesterday, and I looked out, and I saw some trees. And those trees were planted in what? Dirt. Politics. Who owns that tree? Well, it depends on what dirt it's on. If it's on state land, that tree has one set of rules that goes with it. If it's on your land, that tree has another set of rules that goes with it. I looked at buildings. Some buildings are on state land. Some buildings are on private land. The great inheritance that has been our nation is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, a phrase taken from the philosopher John Locke that explicitly meant private land ownership. The pursuit of happiness was a way they expressed private land ownership, meaning our founders did not see a nation where private ownership was not allowed, where there could be happiness in the pursuit of it. Which means we're already so far off track from the founders' vision as to potentially be unrecoverable, because no one in America owns their property. Did you know that anymore? The rank unconstitutional nature of property taxes should really, really bother you. Because my parents lived in the house that my grandpa built in 1979 in Leavenworth, and after owning that legacy home for almost 40 years, had to sell it because they could no longer afford to rent it from the government. A dear family that I know on legacy property on Blewett Pass, been there for 117 years, where the father is now encouraging his children to move to different states because they can no longer afford to rent their family's legacy property from the government. These are things that we have to think about in a more sophisticated way than we have in the past if we're going to be salt and light. I was driving here, cars were passing me, and I thought, oh, look, there's a car. Politics. Because of the regulations placed on manufacturers, that car either means you can't afford to own it or it sends you into debt to get it. For those who build houses, they're getting exponentially more expensive to build every year. Why? Say the word, politics. Because energy codes get passed every 2 years just because that makes houses exponentially more expensive to build. Builders don't absorb those costs. They pass those costs on. And now the only people who can afford to build homes in our town are coming from out of state with cash in their pocket, because my kids will never be able to afford to build a house here. Why? Politics. Politics affect your life more than you have probably intentionally considered. Just everywhere you look, from the water that you can swim in and can't fish in, Right, the list could go on, right? But how about this? Why should we talk about Jesus in politics? Not just because of affordability of cars or housing or rightfully being peeved about property taxes. How about Stalin's gulags? That was a political ideology that cost 3.7 million lives from 1929 to when his rule came to an end in 1953. How about Hitler's Dachau and other concentration camps that from 1941 to 1945 cost 6 million Jews and 5 million non-Jews their lives? That was political. How about Mao's Great Leap Forward politics? The great leap, wicked politicians are geniuses at naming horrible things innocently sounding. Affordable Care Act. Oh. Mao's Great Leap Forward was a political policy he put forward that everyone got excited about. And over the course of 4 years, from 1958 to 1962, took more than 45 million citizens' lives murdered at the hand of their government in the name of public health and safety. Tens of millions more starving to death, fathers being forced at gunpoint to bury sons alive who had the audacity to dig up a government's potato to feed their starving family. Stories you don't hear about. Stories from history past taken from nations that had taken political ideas that are currently being espoused by some political parties in our nation and taken those ideas and implemented them fully to the corners of the nation. The reason college students are dumb, and they are universally dumb, is because they're being taught things in institutions where ideas don't have to work. And because they have no knowledge of history nor life experience to compare it to, they can hear bad ideas, think they're good, and then march for those ideas to be implemented. We have to start thinking more intentionally about Jesus and politics. Why? Lest we leave an inheritance for our children that's devastating. As I consider what my children will inherit socially, what my children will inherit nationally and politically, I think I will spend my life and potentially spill my life's blood, and if I'm lucky, like best case scenario, I can hold it where it's at. I don't see a picture where it actually gets better. But if we refuse to lean hard against the current of our day, there's no chance that it gets better. It will only progressively, swiftly, aggressively get worse. So we should be thinking about, talking about, wrestling with Jesus in politics, if for no other reason than to obey the Proverbs command to leave inheritance for our children. Hey everybody, Pastor Josh here. If you enjoyed that clip, you can check out the full sermon right here.